We all know, of course, that Justice O'Connor was the first of her gender, the majority gender in our country, to be named to the United States Supreme Court. But Justice, I think our
a late start. It took close to 200 years to get around to that.
Yes, ma'am, indeed.
I'm glad they did.
I think our audience would like to know a little bit about what led up to that historic appointment. I understand you grew up on a cattle ranch.
I did. In New Mexico and Arizona. It was in the old area of the Gadsden Purchase. That was a strip of land below the Gila River that the U.S. bought back from Mexico. We had given it away and said it belonged to Mexico, and then we bought the chunk back, and that was the Gadsden Purchase. And that's where the Lazy Bee Ranch was.
How?
Is this better? Can you hear better? Okay, we finally got something that works here.
And you all heard the justice talk about she grew up on a cattle ranch. I gather there were no towns nearby.
It was about 30 miles to the nearest town, and we had to go once a week and get groceries. But it was pretty remote, and I really enjoyed the ranch life. It was fun. You would have enjoyed it, too. A lot of what we did, we had to do on horseback, so everybody had a little string of horses that you could use and ride. And it was very much an outdoor life.
Now, being so far from school, did you
I
ride
had
a
to go
horse
away
to school? Or?
No, it was too far to do that. My parents decided to send me off to El Paso, Texas, where I had maternal grandparents living. And I lived with them and went to school in El Paso.
What was your experience with civic education?
Well, we didn't have any, as far as I know, but it was an amazing thing to be off in El Paso going to school. I remember one time the principal of the school I was attending had somehow become acquainted with Eleanor Roosevelt. And of course, she was the wife of President Roosevelt. And Eleanor Roosevelt agreed to come to Radford School, where I was a student, and meet with us one day and speak. And I'll never forget being out in front of the school, and the black car drove up, and out got Eleanor Roosevelt. And she was kind of a homely sort of a woman. And she got out of the car and walked up around the flagpole in front of the school. And all of us as students were out there to greet her. And it was kind of a major event in our lives to have the president's wife there to talk to us. So that was quite a day.
Did you learn a little bit about Texas history?
Oh, that's all we studied. U.S. history didn't matter in Texas. It was all Texas history. That was the only thing that mattered.
Little Sam Houston, little Stephen Austin?
Absolutely. It was amazing. They probably still do it. Are some of you from Texas here today? Yeah, okay. Is it still Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin? Yeah, okay.
Well, you obviously did pretty good in school in El Paso, because next we find you accepted into Stanford University in California, graduating top of your class, and then Stanford Law School.
Yeah, but it's amazing, because the year that I graduated from Austin High School in El Paso, I don't think a single member of my class applied to any college out of state.
Really?
That year. No, I don't think so.
What made
I was
you?
the only one. And I think the reason I applied to Stanford was because my father had wanted to go there. He grew up in California part of the time, and he had hoped to go to Stanford. And I think I was just listening to that, and I thought I'd apply. So it worked. That was good.
Now, you did pretty well there, too. You ended up graduating not only undergraduate, but being accepted and graduating near the top of your class at Stanford Law School.
Got to go to law school, which was fun.
So I imagine you graduated, you were showered with offers of clerkships and law firms.
I got out of law school and I had done well at Stanford. I could not get a job as a lawyer in California. And I probably made between 30 and 40 job applications in California, and not one would even talk to me for an interview. It was just amazing. It was a different time, that's for sure.
How did you end up utilizing your law degree?
Well, that was the problem. I did go back to Arizona, and I became a precinct committee person. You might want to try that yourselves. I became a precinct committee person. And then I ran for the legislature there in Arizona and somehow got myself elected to the legislature. And that opened up some doors in due course.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
But don't I recall, right upon graduation, you couldn't, no law firm would hire you. Didn't you have to go to Alameda County?
well, that was after I had gotten my undergraduate degree, and I did want to get hired, and I had my law degree, and I couldn't get a job offer. And I finally found a county attorney in San Mateo County, California, who was willing to take me on, and I joined that office, and things progressed from there. But I was lucky to finally get a job.
And don't I recall you had to offer to work for free at first?
Yes. Yeah, that helped a little bit.
Think about that, young ladies. This is in the lifetime of your parents and your grandparents. This individual, this towering individual in
hardly.
American history,
But anyway,
could not find a job, would not be hired because of her gender back then.
yeah, it was hard to get a
How far
job as a
we've gone.
woman in those days, no
Thanks
question.
to people like you.
Yeah.
You mentioned you got elected to the legislature.
Yes,
This is something I don't think a lot of people know. You served in all three branches of government
in Arizona. I
didn't
did.
you?
Yes,
And weren't you the first woman to serve as majority leader of a state senate?
yes, yes. I think I was the first one probably in the U.S.
How about that?
But it was interesting. I really enjoyed my involvement with state government. It was fascinating.
Now, people I know in Arizona say that when you were the majority leader, you were very effective at forging bipartisan compromise. Something a little in short supply here in Washington these days.
Well, that was what
How'd you do it?
Okay, I'll tell you what I used to do in Arizona. If we had an issue that was pretty tough and there were people on both sides, I would invite the key people, 2 or 3 people, over to my house about cocktail time or dinner time and see if they couldn't stop by. And we'd sit out on the side where we could look at the sunset a little bit and have a pleasant visit with a little something to nibble on and see if we couldn't get things pleasant enough that we could get agreement on something. And usually we could. I mean, that worked out. If you were casual about it and offered a little something good to eat, you could make progress, and that's what we did.
You were known for your guacamole, homemade
Well, among
guacamole.
other things. I like to cook, so it was all right.
And after your service in the legislature, I understand you were on the Arizona Court of Appeals. And there you are one
Yes.
day in 1981, minding your own business, dispensing...
In my office at the court in Arizona, in Phoenix, and the phone rang. And I don't know where the secretary was, but I picked it up, and it was the White House calling. The White House? He said, yes, the president would like to talk to Judge O'Connor. Is she there? Speaking. So here this nice voice got on the phone. Sandra? Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to put you on the Supreme Court of the United States and announce it tomorrow. Is that all right with you? Now, what would you say? I didn't have much of an offer to turn it down. So I said I'd be honored, and sure enough, the next day, that was the announcement that I was going to be put on the U.S. Supreme Court. And that was a major change because the nation had never had a woman on that court before. So that was a big to-do.
I think we're all glad you said yes. Do you think female judges and male judges decide cases any differently?
Normally, I would say not. I don't know whether there are certain issues where you might tend to find some difference of viewpoint because of sex, but I think there are very few where that would be the case. And I didn't find issues that I thought were really decided while I sat there on the basis of one's gender. It worked out all right.
Now, had you known President Reagan, who appointed you before?
No,
or?
I had met him a time or two. Mrs. Reagan's parents lived in Arizona. They were retired, but they used to come once in a while, and she would be with them. But I really didn't know either of the Reagans.
Was it a difficult transition into the court? I mean, there are those 8 old fellers,
Well,
and all
they
of a
were
sudden
okay.
there's you.
They were okay. In fact, one of them had been my classmate in law school, William Rehnquist. Isn't that amazing? We were in the very same class.
Who was later,
He became Chief Justice. So that was quite a surprise.
I understand you have a custom in the court of shaking hands
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
What is that all about?
It's an effort to keep the court collegial. I mean, you want to feel like you know and are friends with every member of the court. You don't want to be unhappy and at the point that you don't even want to shake hands with each other. So it is the custom at the U.S. Supreme Court every time they get together each day to shake hands with every other justice. I think that's a good policy. I don't know if any of you are on a board or a group of similar size where you get together, but if you are, it's a good idea to try to remain congenial. And one of the ways that I helped promote collegiality in making decisions was to wait until an opportune time and then have everybody there and fix something kind of tasty to eat and go up at about sunset time and watch the sunset go down and have a nibble and see if you couldn't get agreement on something of importance. And usually we could.
A smart idea.
Yeah, not bad.
Was there ever any justice whose hand you didn't want to shake?
Well, if there were, I wouldn't tell you.
Anybody have a particular strong handshake?
Oh, yes. The first time I went to the Supreme Court as a justice and shook hands with everybody else, I got to Byron White. Does that name mean anything to any of you? He was an incredible football star. I don't know if you knew that. He was fantastic. And I got to him, and I thought I was going to die when he shook my hand. I mean, it was paralysis. I never had anything. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid I was going to have tears rolling down my eyes. He shook it so hard. So I had to learn. Give me your hand. I had to learn to do that. I grabbed his thumb so he couldn't do that to me anymore.
For self-preservation.
Self-preservation. It was really amazing. He was stronger than he knew he was, I think.
Now, Justice O'Connor, even before you took senior status from the court, you become...
There isn't any senior status. You're either a member, a voting member, or you're not.
Before you stepped back from being an active justice, you had concern over civic education. And in recent years, you've spoken out quite a bit about your concern over civic education, service learning. Why is that? Of all the issues you could pick.
Well, it's just that by the time you're in high school, let's say, and you learn how government works and you want to be part of it, you want to be in a system where you can be part of it, where your views matter and you can express them and you can be part of what happens. And I just think that's important in our society. So if we have people elected to some citizens group in a state to do something like be on a school board, you have to make sure that everybody can get together on that school board and participate. And they need to be able to speak freely to each other and Try to make sensible decisions. And that's how our system is supposed to work and needs to work. So when you're in school, you have to learn to start working together in smaller groups of students. Maybe you have a school council of some kind, and each of your grades can be represented by a handful of people. Try to participate in something like that so you learn what it's like to be a member of a smaller group that belongs to a bigger organization, and try to become a part of it in a working way.
Now, you recently have become a game designer, a game developer.
I wouldn't know about that, but we do have a couple of games that young people can play and learn as they do it to be participants. Now, you talk about it. You're the one that picks these things.
Oh, no, ma'am. I, like so many others, are honored to trail in your wake. Justice O'Connor has founded a program called iCivics. Who here knows about iCivics or used the games?
I see one hand. Oh, I see several hands out there,
Hey,
but not
Justice.
enough. Now listen, you go look up iCivics, little I, civics.org, and see if you can't find some things constructive to do based on iCivics. I bet you can, and I hope you will, and try to affect what happens at your school, try to affect what happens in your community, because you can have a voice that matters.
On iCivics, you will find a suite of games that I hear from teachers all over the country who say, I love this. This is the best program to help kids develop a sense of civic efficacy. The only problem is I can't get the kids to stop playing the games.
Well, that's all right. We like that.
They're video games where you role play that you're the president, where you role play you're a Supreme Court justice, you're in a law firm. There's a marvelous program on iCivics called Drawing Board. There are programs on iCivics that will help with English. This is an incredible program. How did you come up with this idea of putting the stuff out there on the web?
Well, it's more fun to play games, and if you can do that, you can reach a lot of people if you can get it on the website. So we did, and I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. So look up iCivics and see if you can't enjoy playing a few games and learning something while you go.
In 50,000 schools around the country so far, with more to come. What can young people like this incredible group out here do to be active, engaged citizens right now, Justice O'Connor?
Well, you just have to join something that lets you participate, and that's why we're suggesting one avenue in your area might be an iCivics group, but you can do it in any group that you're in if you'll volunteer to be part of one of the organizations that helps that group operate, and just be a participant and see if you can't make a difference. I think you can.
With all the time pressures and obligations people have on them today, what's the best argument you can give for being civically engaged, for caring about your community?
Well, I want to be part of deciding what happens in my community, in my town, in my county. I want to have a voice in how it operates and what they do, and in how we organize ourselves in the area in which I live. I want to have a voice in it, and I'll bet you do too. So find a way to be involved. Join some entity in your city or your county or wherever you live, and be part of what decides what's going to happen there.
Well, I see that our time is up.
Well,
So
all right.
what
I'm
final
sorry.
advice?
Well, I want every one of you to join some entity in your area where you live that lets you be a part of deciding about some of the things that they do in that area that you care about. And I think you'll find it much more satisfying if your voice counts than if it doesn't. So see if you can't be part of something where you live that matters to you. Good luck.
Thank you, Justice O'Connor.